So I'm gonna make it. Anyways, you have the question saying, "Are women better than men?" And of course not. Of course that of course men, women are not better than men. That's not what feminism is about. Um, but I think the point is that I want to talk about the idea of affirmative action. And you're saying that discrimination is always wrong, and you know, um, because there are laws that favor women as opposed to men, and it's really, for me, it's really a question about saying that discrimination, the simple fact of discrimination doesn't make something wrong, I believe. You know, I think that there are legitimate situations where discrimination is correct and is legitimate, and I think that feminism is about, you know, not saying that women are better than men, but just that women are different than men, and that different group of people have different experiences, and some people face more barriers, and all the marginalized group of people, disadvantaged people, face more barriers, face more institutional discrimination that prevent them from, you know, being totally themselves. And I think that the most important thing is about saying that, we should protect and promote the idea that people are not just individuals. People are also members of different group in the society. And being a woman and being non-white or being gay or being whatever, they are all marginalized group identities that need extra protection. And because if we simply treat everyone equally and give them abstract legal equality, that doesn't really promote real equality. We have to protect group rights as well, because group identity play a very important role in people's lives. And if you belong to a minority, you see things differently, you experience things differently, and if we don't do anything to help minorities, then they will be forced to assimilate to the mainstream culture. And that's why we have saying like, oh, it's a man's world, it's a blah blah blah, because women have to adapt to the discourses that men have created throughout the centuries. And affirmative action is about equaling the you know so yeah, the simple fact of discrimination is not just does not make it wrong. I think the idea is that we have to consider the purpose and the effect of discrimination. And for example, just the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination suggests that racial discrimination is any discrimination, exclusion, restriction, or preferences based on race, color, descent, and which has the purpose of affecting or nullifying or impairing the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise on an equal footing of human rights and fundamental freedoms. But racial discrimination does not include special measures taken for the sole purpose of securing adequate advancement of certain racial ethnic group requiring protection. And you could say the same thing about women, that women need special protection to ensure that they are represented adequately in all level of the society. And so that's what affirmative action is about. And in the end, you talk about how men are not allowed to be in a women's shelter, that kind of thing. And I think that it's really a very complicated issue. And sometimes I think that women who have been assaulted by their husband or boyfriend, or they have experienced this kind of male violence, and when they go into shelter, they are shocked, and they want to talk to people, or they can only talk to people who women who have the same experiences of being assaulted, of what it's like to have to always be careful and look after themselves. We know that from studies, social science studies, saying that women talk differently, act differently when they're in the presence of a man and when they're not present in the presence of a man. So in order for women to really strategically kind of combat the idea of male violence, they sometimes would need to have a women-only spaces where they can really, you know, learn how to, you know, share their own experiences of what it's like to be a woman and to be assaulted by men, and how to, you know, come up with strategy to, you know, resist that particular kind of male violences. And sometimes, you know, women, when they hear a voice, a male voice, or when they see a man in the shelter, they, you know, they get nervous and they can't really build that kind of resistance, and they can't really share the dialogue that women would have otherwise if there are no men around. So it's a very sensitive space, a shelter, you know, abuse center shelter, and so sometimes women want a women-only spaces, and I see the legitimacy in that. I see the legitimacy in having like a safe space just for like gay people, or like, you know, whatever, or, you know, all that kind of thing. I think, you know, sometimes we make the mistake of saying that everyone is just an individual and we're all equal, but it really makes a difference in like what group that you belong to. Some groups of people are really more marginalized than other, and we need like a space where we're just for ourselves and we just talk about our experiences. And I think that's what it's about. It's not really about excluding men. It's about the power dynamic between an advantaged group and a disadvantaged group, and about the mainstream society and those who have to, you know, forced to integrate with the mainstream society, and that effect, that kind of oppression is a systemic one, not an individual oppression that you would talk about. So we're not really talking about individuals. We're talking about groups, and, you know, and that kind of American concept that, you know, all men are equal before the law. But I think that there's a legitimacy in talking about group right, not just individuals right. So that's my response.